So I finally made it up to the Marseille at tier 10 on this French battlecruiser line, and I gotta say, this one's pretty good. The line is really unfortunate to grind. I'm gonna get that out of the way at the start. The tier 8 and 9 are miserable in comparison to the tier 10. This ship actually feels like a good battlecruiser. It's not as tanky as a battleship, but it's far tankier than a cruiser. The guns aren't battleship guns, but they hit way harder than cruiser guns tend to. So I do feel like this ship is a good example of a battlecruiser in World of Warships. It's a lot of fun to play as a flanking ship, as a even reasonable mid to late game battleship. It feels pretty good. The HE, as I mentioned in my previous video where I was talking about the grinding experience on the French battlecruisers, I'm using it more, and I'm having better results because I'm using the HE more. It does decent damage, and of course has pretty good fire chance. Alongside the reload booster, it's a great way to stack some damage early on battleships. And of course, if you got HE loaded, you know, we crushed that DD pretty hard. That was like a 10k salvo, one of them, assuming the dispersion actually hit. But it's still pretty good early game for those scenarios where the shell velocity and the overall HE alpha can definitely impact some of those early destroyer engagements. Unfortunately, we did lose our DD in this one, but we'll hopefully come back and be able to take this flank anyway. The speed boost, of course, is extremely useful. I am starting to run the speed boost upgrade on it so that it lasts a little bit longer. It's pretty common for a lot of French cruisers and French ships in general. I'll talk about the build and that more later though. As I've been playing the Marseille, I've had about 5 games in this ship, and this one was the very best one that I got. I think that it's a ship that can be very good in the right circumstance, but there's a lot of weaknesses to this ship. Of course, one of the major ones is the somewhat long reload on these battlecruiser guns. A lot of battlecruisers tend to have a 20-second or so base reload, and then you can reduce that further with reload mod. Marseille is over 20 seconds, and that's okay thanks to the reload booster, but you have to understand, even fighting some of the other battlecruisers at the tier, your DPM might be lacking a little bit. The other unfortunate thing is no improved pen angles. That's one of the things that makes Stalingrad, Alaska, really good battlecruisers, because their AP and these big hard-hitting guns are much more consistent. So this ship with the AP, you have to aim up into superstructures more. As soon as you start to see other ships angling, you can see 3 bounces there, where I think a Stalingrad or possibly an Alaska would have done a lot more damage. A little bit more full pens, that kind of thing. You're not bouncing nearly as much. So good use of AP and HE is definitely required in this thing. But assuming that the guns hit, right? Of course, dispersion is still a thing. Assuming they hit, they do some really good damage, even up into the superstructure. And I think that's one of the nicest things about this ship. I feel quite confident to make plays. The damage output is reasonably consistent. I can rely on it to push this flank. It's not a 1v1, but pushing a Conqueror in a ship that can get overmatched by Conqueror guns can be a challenging endeavor, right? We don't even have torpedoes to finish him off at these closer ranges. I'm reliant on my main guns completely to make this aggressive push, and I feel confident in making it. And that's what's really nice about this ship. We finally have guns that I think are good enough to be worthy of that longer reload in this line. The other ones felt a little bit too random to me. Here, this is at close range, of course, but I at least do feel like I can take out some battleships, some heavier ships. And if I push into a cruiser, I know that my armor is going to reasonably hold up against cruisers, and my guns are scary enough that a lot of cruisers will need to angle to this ship. Alongside the really good speed, of course, getting onto these flanks will open up a lot of broadside salvos into cruisers. Unfortunately, I don't quite lead this one enough. It's definitely a salvo I wish I had back later on in the game, as we're gonna see. But as we're pushing in here, I'm still confident against a Kansas, right? 406mm guns, they do overmatch my bow, but on this ship, we finally get a 36mm deck and a 30mm upper belt. The normal belt is pretty thick, of course, trying to protect the Citadel, but that upper belt being 30mm allows me to take a reasonable angle against the Kansas and hope that he's going to hit that upper belt and bounce, right? I'm trying to make it difficult to hit my nose, and that's where the maneuverability also can help here. As we're pushing in though, I do have to worry about how many people are shooting at me. So of course I am going to use islands to position myself so I can just take a fight with this Donskoy here. Already a double fire, not looking good, but we do get a nice chunk into him in exchange. But that's our damage control used. And well, here comes one of the biggest weaknesses of this French battlecruiser line and battlecruisers in general. Big cruisers that take a lot of fire damage. The fire durations, of course, is much, much longer than on a standard cruiser, right? I think in this case, it's 60 seconds. Some of them are 45 seconds. I'm not really sure on the actual stat, but all I know is 3 permanent fires hurts. Sorry, make that 4 permanent fires. We do manage to take out the Donskoy though, and that is our high caliber. A Salem pushing in, and I decide not to ram because I think it's more interesting to try and go for these broadsides. Unfortunately, the guns don't quite depress low enough, and we get 8 overpens. So keep that in mind. If you're going really close broadsides with the Marseille, you have to shoot, or you at least have to keep the distance more than what I had here. I was trying to pull my mouse down as much as possible. The guns just wouldn't go down any lower. And we barely managed to survive since our Atlantico manages to take out the Salem. Moving on, after using a single heal, well, we're left in a 4v1. Can we bring this one back? It is Epicenter. We got a heal ticking. We got some different bonuses here. There's potential to bring it back. First, we have to take out our enemy counterpart, right? The Marseille on the enemy team. Not quite a good enough angle for Citadels, but 22k. And I have a reload booster. And here's one of the other weaknesses of this ship. Got a large superstructure that's very easy to hit. So even if you're facing into a Marseille and you are going to bounce off of his belt or bow armor, you can just aim up into this superstructure. It's very, very, very big. And of course, there is the potential of overmatching if you can overmatch 26 millimeters of armor. And that's what the Massachusetts does, taking us out. But 233k? That's a pretty good result. Not all of my games went this well though, but I gotta say, Marseille is a breath of fresh air for this line. Unfortunate that it does require you to grind through 2 pretty miserable ships, but the tier 10 reward at the end is at least a really good battlecruiser. So onto the build, I did mention that I am using the speed boost upgrade. Other than that, everything else is the same. Something to note though, the turrets do feel a little bit slow here. On top of main battery mod 3, right, I think the turrets are just a little bit slower. The very interesting thing though is this ship actually has better concealment than the tier 9. So 11.8, I believe, was tier 9. Tier 10 gets 11.6. So this ship is bigger and better in a lot of ways, and it's more concealed. There's a lot of things that make this ship much better, but let's talk about the commander because I have changed it. Notice how I do have a 21-point commander now. I did respec out of heavy AP shells and into top grade gunner. This is what I think a good commander for this ship is going to look like. I really do think that having Grease the Gears is necessary, as is Gunfeeder. These 2 tier 1s are really, really good. And as it stands, still a 36-second turn time. Fortunately though, the middle turret, I don't know if this game exactly showed it, but this middle turret is 360. So at least you do have the ability to shoot this turret all the time. It's just the front 2, or the front one and the back one, that are going to have to turn really slowly around. To talk about the armor though, yeah, it's much, much, much better. 25 here, sorry. I said 26 in the video, but 25. Functionally the same for overmatch. Yeah, very easy to overmatch this at this tier, but a lot of this armor can be usable. I think that at longer ranges, you're going to be quite tough to deal with. And even at closer ranges, people have to aim pretty high to hit this 30mm belt, since our normal armor belt is pretty thick. Tall at least, not terribly thick. 210mm, it's not the thickest. I've played 5 games in it so far, and yeah, our win rate was not very good today. I might have ended my stream a little early thanks to that. But the average damage was really, really good. 162k is awesome for any tier 10. Obviously, small sample size. So this probably goes down over time, but pretty good so far. Unfortunately, though, it does mean it is a battle cruiser without a radar, so all your battle impact is in your damage. And ships like that tend to have less battle impact, and because of that, tend to have a worse solo win rate. So at least this ship is fun to play while you're playing it, but tough to have a battle impact all the time. The damage output is great, and I feel pretty comfortable playing it at longer ranges or even pushing into brawl a little bit. So let me know what you think of this thing in the comments down below. Are you planning on grinding this line now, knowing how painful it is, but at least at the end there's a decent ship? Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.